What if I told you that what you call shyness isn't shyness at all? What if the label you've carried, the excuse you've used, the limitation you've accepted is actually masking one of the most powerful and learnable skill sets in human interaction? Every day, millions of people walk through life believing they're naturally introverted, socially awkward, or simply not good with people. They watch others effortlessly navigate conversations, build rapport, and command respect, thinking these individuals were born with some magical social gene. But here's the truth that will change everything. Those people aren't naturally gifted. They've simply developed emotional intelligence and social skills that you can master, too. The difference between someone who struggles socially and someone who thrives isn't personality, genetics, or luck. It's knowledge. It's the understanding of human psychology, the ability to read emotional cues, and the strategic application of influence principles. What most people call social skills are actually emotional intelligence in action. And emotional intelligence is not a fixed trait. It's a learnable system. This audiobook will shatter the myths you've believed about yourself and give you the frameworks used by psychologists, negotiators, and influence masters to read people like open books and respond with precision. You're about to discover that social interaction isn't mysterious or random. It follows patterns, operates on principles, and can be mastered through deliberate practice. By the time you finish this audiobook, you'll understand why you've struggled socially, how to read the hidden emotional landscape of any interaction, and most importantly, how to position yourself as someone others naturally want to connect with. Respect and follow. This isn't about becoming fake or manipulative. This is about becoming authentically powerful in your social interactions. Chapter 1. The Shyness Myth. Why you've been misdiagnosed. Let's start by destroying the biggest lie you've been told about yourself. Society has created a convenient label called shyness that explains away social struggles. But this label is not only wrong, it's harmful. When you believe you're shy, you accept limitation as identity. You stop trying to improve because you think your social capacity is fixed by nature. The truth is far different. What people call shyness is actually a collection of underdeveloped skills masked by emotional reactivity. When you walk into a room and feel overwhelmed, that's not shyness speaking. That's your nervous system responding to a situation where you lack the tools to feel confident. When you struggle to join conversations, that's not a personality flaw. That's missing knowledge about how conversations actually work. Research in social psychology reveals that confidence in social situations comes from competence, not from some innate personality trait. The person who seems naturally charismatic has learned to read social cues, manage their emotional state, and respond appropriately to different personality types. They've developed what researchers call social cognitive abilities, which include emotional perception, emotional understanding, and emotional regulation. Here's what actually happens when you feel what you call shy. Your brain perceives a social situation as potentially threatening because you don't have reliable strategies for success. Your amygdala triggers a stress response, flooding your system with cortisol and adrenaline. This biochemical reaction makes you feel anxious, self-conscious, and withdrawn. But this isn't shyness. This is your brain trying to protect you from a situation where you lack competence. The most socially successful people understand this distinction. They know that social anxiety is simply feedback indicating areas where skills need development. Instead of accepting anxiety as evidence of limitation, they use it as a roadmap for growth. They ask themselves, what specific skill would make this situation feel manageable? What knowledge am I missing that would give me confidence here? Consider the difference between someone learning to drive and someone who's been driving for years. The new driver feels anxious, overwhelmed, and uncertain because they lack competence. The experienced driver feels relaxed and confident because they've developed automatic responses to driving situations. Social interaction follows the exact same pattern. The reason you've believed the shyness myth for so long is that our culture doesn't teach emotional intelligence as a learnable skill set. We treat social ability like a mysterious gift rather than a developed competency. Schools teach math, science, and reading. But they don't teach how to read facial expressions, how to calibrate emotional responses, or how to build rapport strategically. This educational gap creates a dangerous assumption. People believe that if they haven't naturally developed social skills by adulthood, they never will. They resign themselves to being the quiet one, the observer. The person who watches life happen rather than actively engaging with it. But this resignation is based on false information. The most important realization you can have is this: every social skill can be learned. Reading body language is learnable. Managing emotional states is learnable. Building rapport is learnable. Influencing others ethically is learnable. Commanding respect is learnable. These aren't personality traits. They're competencies. When you shift from identifying as shy to identifying as someone developing social competencies, everything changes. You stop making excuses and start making progress. You stop avoiding social situations and start using them as practice opportunities. You stop accepting social limitation as permanent and start viewing it as temporary. The people you admire socially weren't born different from you. They simply learned different skills. And if they can learn them, so can you. Chapter 2. Decoding the Emotional Landscape. Reading what others won't say. Human communication operates on multiple levels simultaneously, and most people only perceive the surface level. They hear words and miss the emotions behind them. They see actions but ignore the motivations driving those actions. This limited perception keeps them reactive and confused in social situations. Emotional intelligence begins with learning to read the hidden emotional landscape that exists beneath every interaction. This landscape includes micro-expressions, vocal tonality, body language, energy levels, and unstated needs. When you develop the ability to perceive these elements accurately, you gain access to information that others miss completely. The foundation of emotional reading is understanding that humans are constantly broadcasting their internal states. But most of this communication happens below conscious awareness. A person might say they're fine while their compressed lips and tense shoulders communicate frustration. Someone might agree with you verbally while their body language signals resistance. Facial expressions provide the richest source of emotional information. Paul Ekman's research identified 7 universal facial expressions that appear across all cultures. Happiness, sadness, anger, fear, disgust, surprise, and contempt. But these basic expressions only represent gross emotional states. The subtle variations within each expression reveal much more detailed information. Real happiness, for example, engages both the mouth and the eyes, creating what researchers call a Duchenne smile. Fake happiness only engages the mouth muscles, leaving the eyes unchanged. When you learn to distinguish between genuine and performed emotions, you can respond appropriately instead of being misled by social facades. Anger has multiple variations that require different responses. Explosive anger indicates loss of emotional control and suggests you should de-escalate or disengage. Cold anger indicates calculated displeasure and requires direct address of the underlying issue. Frustrated anger indicates blocked goals and creates opportunities for problem-solving collaboration. Fear manifests differently depending on its source. Social fear appears as eye contact avoidance, defensive body positioning, and verbal hesitation. Performance fear shows up as nervous gestures, rapid speech, and perfectionist language. Understanding the type of fear someone experiences allows you to provide appropriate support or adjustment. Vocal tonality carries emotional information that often contradicts verbal content. A person might use confident words while their voice wavers with uncertainty. Someone might speak aggressively while their tone reveals underlying hurt. Learning to separate tonal messages from verbal messages gives you access to what people are really communicating. Body language operates as an emotional barometer that updates constantly throughout interactions. Crossed arms might indicate defensiveness, but they might also indicate cold or comfortable positioning. The key is reading clusters of signals rather than isolated gestures. Defensiveness combines crossed arms with backward lean, minimal eye contact, and closed facial expressions. Energy levels provide crucial information about engagement and receptivity. High energy indicates openness to new information and willingness to engage actively. Low energy might signal fatigue, disinterest, or emotional overwhelm. Matching your communication style to someone's energy level dramatically improves connection and influence. Unstated needs drive most human behavior, but people rarely express these needs directly. The need for respect might manifest as argumentative behavior. The need for security might appear as excessive questioning. The need for recognition might show up as attention-seeking actions. When you identify and address unstated needs, you solve problems that others don't even recognize exist. The most sophisticated emotional readers learn to calibrate for individual differences. Some people naturally express emotions more intensely than others. Some cultures encourage emotional restraint while others promote emotional expressiveness. What matters isn't the absolute level of emotional expression, but the relative changes within each person's typical range. Developing emotional reading skills requires deliberate practice and systematic observation. Start by choosing one person you interact with regularly and focusing on their emotional patterns. Notice how their facial expressions change when they discuss different topics. Observe their body language shifts during various types of conversations. Track their energy fluctuations throughout different times of day. The goal isn't to become a mind reader or to manipulate others through emotional insight. The goal is to develop genuine understanding that allows you to respond more effectively and compassionately to the people around you. When you understand what others are experiencing emotionally, you can provide the type of interaction they need most. Chapter 3. The Architecture of Influence. How strategic minds shape social dynamics. Most people approach social interactions hoping for positive outcomes but lacking any systematic method for achieving them. They rely on luck, personality, or charm without understanding the underlying principles that actually create influence and connection. This random approach produces random results and leaves them feeling frustrated and ineffective. Strategic social thinking operates differently. It recognizes that human behavior follows predictable patterns and that influence can be created through deliberate application of psychological principles. When you understand these principles and apply them systematically, you stop hoping for good outcomes and start engineering them. The foundation of strategic influence is reciprocity, one of the most powerful psychological drivers of human behavior. When someone receives value from you, they experience psychological pressure to provide value in return. This isn't manipulation, it's how humans maintain social balance and build trust. Strategic thinkers provide value first, creating natural opportunities for positive reciprocal responses. Value can be provided in multiple forms: emotional support, useful information, social connection, problem-solving assistance, or simply positive attention. The key is identifying what type of value each person needs most and delivering it authentically. Someone struggling with a decision needs clarity and perspective. Someone feeling overwhelmed needs calm reassurance. Someone seeking recognition needs acknowledgement and appreciation. Social proof operates as another fundamental influence principle. People look to others, especially similar others, to determine appropriate behavior and attitudes. When you can demonstrate that respected individuals support your position or that similar people have made the choice you're advocating, you dramatically increase persuasive power. Strategic thinkers build social proof systematically. They collect testimonials, share success stories, and reference credible authorities who support their perspectives. They also position themselves within groups and communities that enhance their own credibility through association. Commitment and consistency drive behavior because humans have a deep psychological need to appear consistent with their previous decisions and stated beliefs. When someone makes a commitment, especially a public commitment, they experience internal pressure to follow through. Strategic influencers help others make small commitments that lead naturally toward larger desired behaviors. This principle explains why asking for agreement on small points before presenting larger requests increases success rates dramatically. It also explains why helping someone articulate their own reasons for a decision creates stronger commitment than providing external reasons. Authority influences behavior because humans have evolved to defer to expertise and legitimate power structures. However, authority must be established before it can be leveraged. Strategic thinkers build authority through demonstrating competence, sharing credentials, and consistently providing valuable insights. The most powerful form of authority is expertise authority, which comes from consistently knowing more about relevant topics than the people you're trying to influence. This requires continuous learning and staying ahead of trends in your areas of focus. Liking increases influence because people prefer to say yes to individuals they know and respect. But liking isn't about being likable in a superficial sense. Strategic liking is built through finding genuine commonalities, providing sincere compliments, and working toward shared goals. The most effective way to increase liking is through collaborative problem solving. When you work with someone to solve a challenge they care about, you create shared investment and mutual respect that transcends superficial social interaction. Scarcity motivates action because humans place higher value on opportunities that appear limited or exclusive. However, scarcity must be authentic to be ethical and effective. Strategic thinkers create genuine scarcity through limited availability, exclusive access, or time-sensitive opportunities. Understanding these influence principles allows you to structure interactions for optimal outcomes. Instead of hoping people will respond positively, you can create conditions that make positive responses more likely. Instead of leaving influence to chance, you can apply systematic approaches that produce consistent results. The most important aspect of strategic influence is maintaining ethical boundaries. These principles should be used to create mutual benefit, not to manipulate or exploit others. The goal is to facilitate positive outcomes that serve everyone involved, not to gain advantage at others' expense. When you approach influence strategically, you become someone others naturally want to connect with and support. You provide value consistently, build genuine relationships, and create win-win outcomes that strengthen your social position over time. Chapter 4. Emotional Regulation Mastery. Controlling your internal state for external success. Your emotional state determines your social effectiveness more than any other factor. When you're calm, confident, and centered, you make better decisions, communicate more clearly, and influence others more effectively when you're anxious, reactive, or emotionally overwhelmed. Even the best social strategies fail to produce desired outcomes. Most people treat emotions as things that happen to them rather than states they can actively manage. They feel anxious and assume they must remain anxious until the feeling passes naturally. They experience anger and believe they have no choice but to express it immediately. This passive approach to emotional management severely limits social effectiveness and personal power. Emotional regulation is the ability to recognize emotional states as they arise. Understand what triggered them and consciously choose how to respond rather than reacting automatically. This skill transforms you from someone who is controlled by emotions into someone who uses emotions strategically. The first level of emotional regulation is emotional awareness. Most people experience emotions without clearly identifying them. They feel bad but don't distinguish between disappointment, frustration, sadness, or anger. Each of these emotions provides different information and requires different responses. So, accurate identification is crucial. Developing emotional awareness requires creating space between emotional triggers and emotional reactions. When you notice an emotional shift beginning, pause and ask yourself, what exactly am I feeling right now? What specific event or thought triggered this emotion? What is this emotion telling me about my needs or values? The second level is understanding emotional triggers. Certain situations, people or topics predictably generate strong emotional responses. Some people trigger your insecurities through comparison. Some situations activate your perfectionism through performance pressure. Some topics engage your values so strongly that you become defensive or argumentative. Mapping your emotional triggers allows you to prepare for challenging situations in advance. When you know that criticism typically makes you defensive, you can practice receiving feedback calmly. When you know that conflict makes you anxious, you can develop specific strategies for staying centered during disagreements. The third level is emotional reframing, which involves consciously changing how you interpret emotional triggers. Instead of viewing criticism as an attack on your competence, you can reframe it as information for improvement. Instead of seeing conflict as threat, you can view it as an opportunity for deeper understanding. Reframing doesn't mean denying or suppressing emotions. It means choosing interpretations that serve your goals better than automatic interpretations. When someone challenges your idea, you can interpret this as disrespect and become defensive. Or you can interpret it as engagement and respond with curiosity. The fourth level is physiological regulation. Emotions create physical changes in your body: increased heart rate, muscle tension, shallow breathing, and stress hormone release. Learning to manage these physical responses gives you greater control over emotional experiences. Breathing techniques provide the most accessible method for physiological regulation. When you breathe deeply and slowly, you activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which naturally calms emotional arousal. The 478 technique, where you inhale for 4 counts, hold for 7 counts, and exhale for 8 counts, can reduce anxiety and anger within minutes. Progressive muscle relaxation helps release physical tension that accompanies emotional stress. Starting with your feet and moving upward, deliberately tense and then relax each muscle group. This process interrupts the physical component of emotional reactivity and creates space for conscious choice. The fifth level is strategic emotional expression. Once you can regulate your internal emotional state, you can choose how much and which aspects of your emotions to share with others. Sometimes expressing vulnerability builds connection. Sometimes maintaining composure demonstrates leadership. Sometimes showing passion inspires others. Strategic expression means matching your emotional display to your social objectives. In a negotiation, controlled intensity might be more effective than explosive anger. In a supportive conversation, gentle warmth might be more helpful than enthusiastic excitement. In a leadership situation, calm confidence might inspire more trust than visible stress. The highest level of emotional regulation is emotional leverage, where you use emotions as information and motivation rather than obstacles. Anger can signal violated values and motivate boundary setting. Fear can highlight important risks and encourage careful preparation. Frustration can indicate blocked goals and inspire creative problem solving. When you master emotional regulation, you become the person others turn to during crisis because they know you'll remain stable and thoughtful. You become more persuasive because people trust your judgment when it's not clouded by emotional reactivity. You become a better leader because you can inspire confidence through your own emotional stability. Chapter 5. Building Authentic Rapport. The Psychology of Deep Connection. Rapport is the foundation of all meaningful relationships and the prerequisite for genuine influence. Without rapport, your communications lack impact. Your requests get denied and your ideas get dismissed. With deep rapport, people listen more carefully, trust more readily, and support more willingly. Most people approach rapport building through superficial techniques, mirroring body language, finding common interests, or offering compliments. While these methods can create temporary connection, they don't build the deep rapport that transforms relationships and creates lasting influence. Authentic rapport emerges from genuine understanding, shared experiences, and mutual respect. It develops when people feel truly seen, heard, and valued for who they actually are rather than for who they pretend to be. This level of connection requires moving beyond surface-level interaction into meaningful communication about values, experiences, and aspirations. The foundation of authentic rapport is presence. When you give someone your complete attention, free from distractions and mental preoccupations, they feel valued in a way that's increasingly rare in our fragmented attention economy. Presence communicates respect, interest, and importance more powerfully than any words. Developing presence requires practicing focused attention during conversations. Put away electronic devices. Stop planning your next response while others are talking and resist the urge to multitask. Notice when your attention wanders and gently redirect it back to the person in front of you. Active listening builds rapport by demonstrating that you value the other person's thoughts and experiences enough to understand them fully. Active listening goes beyond hearing words to understanding emotions, motivations, and meanings. It involves asking clarifying questions, reflecting back key points, and exploring topics that matter to the other person. The most powerful form of active listening is empathic listening, where you try to understand not just what someone is saying but how they're experiencing their situation. When someone shares a challenge, instead of immediately offering solutions, first seek to understand their emotional experience. How do they feel about the situation? What aspects concern them most? What outcomes would provide relief or satisfaction? Vulnerability creates rapport by demonstrating authenticity and inviting reciprocal openness. When you share something genuine about yourself, especially something that reveals challenge or growth, you create space for others to be authentic as well. This mutual authenticity forms the basis for deep connection. Strategic vulnerability involves sharing personal information that's relevant to the relationship and appropriate for the context. In professional relationships, you might share challenges you've overcome or lessons you've learned. In personal relationships, you might reveal fears, hopes, or meaningful experiences that shaped your perspective. Value alignment creates profound rapport because it taps into fundamental human needs for belonging and meaning. When you discover that someone shares your core values, you feel understood at a deeper level than shared interests can provide. Someone who shares your commitment to growth, integrity, or service becomes naturally attractive as a relationship partner. Identifying value alignment requires asking questions that reveal what matters most to people. What motivates them to work hard? What types of behavior do they find most frustrating in others? What accomplishments make them feel most proud? What changes would they most like to see in the world? Shared experiences build rapport through creating common reference points and emotional bonds. When you go through something challenging or meaningful with another person, you develop connection that extends beyond the immediate situation. This explains why team building activities, collaborative projects, and mutual support during difficulties create lasting relationships. Creating shared experiences requires finding opportunities to work together, solve problems together, or pursue common goals together. Even simple activities like learning something new together, or helping each other with projects can build significant rapport over time. The highest level of rapport building is helping others become their best selves. When you consistently encourage someone's growth, celebrate their successes, and support them through challenges, you become associated with their positive self-development. This creates loyalty and connection that extends far beyond immediate circumstances. Supporting others' development requires understanding their goals, recognizing their progress, and providing resources or encouragement that help them advance. Sometimes this means offering advice or connections. Sometimes it means providing encouragement during difficult periods. Sometimes it means simply believing in their potential when they struggle to believe in themselves. Authentic rapport cannot be faked or forced, but it can be cultivated through genuine interest in others. Consistent, supportive behavior and willingness to be authentic yourself. When you approach relationship building with sincere desire to understand and support others, rapport develops naturally as a byproduct of genuine care and respect. Chapter 6. Social Hierarchy Navigation. Reading and Influencing Power Dynamics. Every social situation contains invisible power structures that determine who gets heard, who gets respected, and who gets their way. Most people remain unconscious of these hierarchies, stumbling through interactions without understanding why some of their ideas get embraced while others get ignored. They focus on what they're saying while missing the crucial dynamics of who they're saying it to and how social positioning affects reception. Understanding social hierarchy isn't about manipulation or exploitation. It's about recognizing reality and operating effectively within it. When you can accurately assess power dynamics, you can position yourself strategically, communicate more effectively, and achieve better outcomes for everyone involved. Social hierarchies exist in every group, from families to corporations to casual friend gatherings. These hierarchies aren't always obvious or officially designated. The person with the most formal authority might not be the most influential. The quietest person might hold the most respect. The newest member might have the most expertise in crucial areas. Identifying true influence requires observing behavioral patterns rather than relying on titles or assumptions. Watch who speaks first in group discussions and who others wait to hear from before forming their own opinions. Notice who gets interrupted and who never gets interrupted. Observe who makes decisions that others follow without question and who suggests ideas that get immediately implemented. Body language reveals hierarchical positioning more accurately than verbal communication. High-status individuals typically display more relaxed postures, take up more space, and make direct eye contact while speaking. They gesture with open palms and maintain calm, controlled movements. Low-status individuals often display more closed postures, minimize their physical presence, and avoid sustained eye contact. However, status displays can be contextual and situational. Someone might display high status in professional settings, but defer completely in family situations. The same person might command respect when discussing their area of expertise, but become subordinate when topics shift to unfamiliar territory. Vocal patterns provide another clear indicator of hierarchical positioning. Higher status individuals typically speak with lower pitch, slower pace, and longer pauses between thoughts. They use declarative statements more often than questions and rarely uptalk or seek verbal approval. Lower status individuals often speak faster, use higher pitch, and frequently seek validation through questions or qualifying statements. The most sophisticated aspect of hierarchy navigation is understanding that status can be fluid and situational. Rather than accepting fixed positions, strategic thinkers learn to raise their status appropriately for different contexts. In meetings where their expertise is relevant, they speak with authority and confidence. In situations where they lack knowledge, they ask intelligent questions that demonstrate engagement without pretending competence they don't possess. Raising your status requires demonstrating value consistently over time. You can't simply decide to be higher status and expect others to recognize it immediately. Status elevation comes through proving competence, providing unique insights, solving problems others can't solve, and consistently delivering on commitments. The most effective approach to status building is becoming genuinely valuable to the group or organization. When you consistently contribute ideas that work, solve problems that matter, and help others succeed, your status rises naturally. People begin to defer to your judgment because experience has taught them that your judgment is usually sound. Another crucial aspect of hierarchy navigation is understanding alliance structures within groups. Most groups contain subgroups and informal coalitions that support different agendas and perspectives. Identifying these alliances helps you understand why certain ideas get supported or opposed regardless of their merit. Building strategic alliances requires providing value to influential people and earning their trust over time. This doesn't mean becoming political or manipulative. It means being genuinely helpful, reliable, and supportive of shared goals. When influential people trust you and know you're competent, they naturally include you in important decisions and defend your interests. The concept of social capital explains why some people can make requests that get immediately approved while others struggle to get basic cooperation. Social capital represents the accumulated goodwill, trust, and positive reputation you've built through previous interactions. Every time you help someone, deliver on a promise, or solve a problem, you make deposits into your social capital account. Managing social capital requires balancing withdrawals and deposits. Each time you ask for a favor, challenge someone's idea, or require others to accommodate your needs, you make a withdrawal. If you make too many withdrawals without sufficient deposits, clear-throat people become less responsive to your requests. The highest level of hierarchy navigation involves elevating others strategically. When you help people succeed, solve their problems, and make them look good, they become invested in your success. This approach builds genuine loyalty and creates mutually beneficial relationships that strengthen over time. Understanding hierarchy also means recognizing when hierarchical resistance will occur and planning accordingly. If your proposal threatens someone's status or power, they will likely oppose it regardless of its merit. In these situations, you need strategies that allow people to save face while supporting necessary changes. The goal of hierarchy navigation isn't to dominate others or climb over them for personal gain. It's to understand social reality clearly enough to operate effectively within it. When you can read power dynamics accurately and position yourself appropriately, you become someone others naturally turn to for leadership, advice, and collaboration. Chapter 7. Conversational Mastery. The Strategic Art of Verbal Influence. Conversation is the primary vehicle for social connection, influence, and relationship building. Yet most people approach it without any systematic understanding of how it actually works. They hope for good conversations rather than engineering them. They react to conversational dynamics instead of strategically guiding them. Mastering conversation requires understanding that dialogue operates on multiple levels simultaneously. There's the content level, which involves the actual information being exchanged. There's the emotional level, which involves the feelings being generated and shared. There's the relationship level, which involves how the interaction affects the connection between participants. And there's the influence level, which involves how the conversation shapes attitudes, decisions, and future behavior. Strategic conversationalists learn to operate effectively on all these levels simultaneously. They provide valuable content while managing emotions, strengthening relationships, and creating positive influence. This multidimensional approach transforms ordinary exchanges into powerful relationship building and influence opportunities. The foundation of conversational mastery is asking questions that create engagement rather than interrogation. Most people ask superficial questions that generate superficial responses. How was your weekend? Fine. How's work going? Okay. These exchanges provide no real connection or useful information. Powerful questions probe deeper layers of experience, motivation, and meaning. Instead of asking someone about their job, ask what aspects of their work energize them most. Instead of asking about their weekend, ask what they did that felt most satisfying or meaningful. These questions invite people to share more interesting and authentic parts of their experience. The best conversation facilitators use a questioning technique called progressive deepening, where each question builds on the previous response to explore topics more thoroughly. If someone mentions they enjoyed a particular project at work, you might ask what made that project especially engaging. If they mention the collaborative aspect, you could explore what makes collaboration work well for them. This approach demonstrates genuine interest while helping people articulate thoughts and feelings they might not have previously examined. When you help someone understand their own motivations and preferences more clearly, you provide real value that makes them want to continue the conversation. Strategic listening involves paying attention not just to what people say, but how they say it and what they don't say. The topics someone discusses enthusiastically reveal their passions and values. The subjects they avoid or dismiss quickly indicate areas of discomfort or disinterest. The emotions that appear when discussing different topics show what matters most to them. Calibrating your communication style to match the other person's preferences dramatically improves conversational effectiveness. Some people prefer detailed explanations while others want concise summaries. Some enjoy philosophical discussions while others focus on practical applications. Some need time to process ideas while others think out loud through dialogue. Recognizing these preferences requires observing how people respond to different types of input. When you share a detailed explanation, do they engage enthusiastically or seem overwhelmed? When you ask about abstract concepts, do they light up or redirect toward concrete examples? Adjusting your approach based on these responses creates much more satisfying interactions for both participants. The rhythm and flow of conversation matters as much as its content. Good conversations have a natural ebb and flow with periods of intense engagement alternating with quieter reflection. They include pauses that allow ideas to settle and moments of levity that maintain emotional balance. Managing conversational flow requires reading energy levels and adjusting accordingly. When someone seems mentally fatigued, shifting to lighter topics, or creating natural ending points, shows consideration and social awareness. When energy is high and engagement is strong, diving deeper into meaningful topics maximizes the opportunity for connection. Storytelling represents one of the most powerful conversational tools because stories engage emotions, create shared experiences, and make abstract concepts concrete and memorable. People remember stories long after they forget facts or arguments. They feel connected to storytellers who share meaningful experiences authentically. Effective storytelling requires structure, relevance, and emotional resonance. Good stories have clear beginnings, middles, and ends. They include enough detail to create vivid mental images without becoming tedious. They connect to themes or topics that matter to the listener and reveal something meaningful about the storyteller. The most powerful stories are those that demonstrate vulnerability, growth, or learning. When you share a story about overcoming a challenge, learning from a mistake, or discovering something important about yourself, you invite others to share their own meaningful experiences. Conversational influence happens through strategic agreement building. Instead of trying to convince people through argument, master conversationalists find areas of natural agreement and build from there. They identify shared values, common goals, or mutual interests and use these as foundations for exploring areas where perspectives might initially differ. This approach works because people are much more receptive to new ideas when they feel understood and respected. When you demonstrate that you genuinely comprehend their perspective before sharing your own, they're more likely to consider your viewpoint fairly. Handling disagreements skillfully separates conversational masters from average communicators. Instead of becoming defensive or argumentative when someone disagrees with them, skilled conversationalists get curious about the disagreement. They ask questions to understand the other person's reasoning and look for valid points within different perspectives. Snorts, this doesn't mean abandoning your own convictions or agreeing with everything others say. It means creating space for different viewpoints to coexist and finding ways to bridge differences constructively. Often apparent disagreements dissolve when people understand each other's underlying concerns and motivations. The conclusion of conversations affects how people remember and feel about the entire interaction. Ending conversations positively requires acknowledging what you appreciated about the exchange, summarizing key insights or agreements, and creating clear next steps if appropriate. Master conversationalists also know how to end conversations gracefully when they've run their natural course. They don't let good conversations drag on until they become awkward or forced. They recognize when meaningful exchange has occurred and create elegant transitions to closure. Chapter 8. Conflict Resolution and Difficult Conversations. Transforming tension into trust. Most people approach conflict with dread, anxiety, and the hope that problems will resolve themselves without direct confrontation. This avoidance strategy occasionally works for minor issues, but it consistently fails for important relationships and significant problems. Unrest conflicts don't disappear. They grow, spread, and eventually explode in ways that damage relationships and outcomes far more than early intervention would have. The fear of conflict stems from misunderstanding what healthy conflict actually involves. Most people equate conflict with fighting, aggression, and emotional damage. They've witnessed or experienced destructive conflicts and concluded that all disagreement is dangerous. But productive conflict is entirely different from destructive fighting. Productive conflict focuses on solving problems and improving relationships. It addresses specific behaviors and situations rather than attacking personality or character. It seeks understanding and resolution rather than victory and domination. When handled skillfully, conflict actually strengthens relationships by clearing the air, establishing better boundaries, and creating deeper mutual understanding. The foundation of effective conflict resolution is separating the person from the problem. When someone's behavior creates difficulties, the issue is the behavior, not their fundamental worth as a human being. This distinction allows you to address problems directly while maintaining respect and care for the individual involved. Framing conflicts as shared problems to solve together rather than battles to win changes the entire dynamic. Instead of positioning yourself against the other person, you position both of you against the problem. This collaborative approach encourages creative problem solving and reduces defensive reactions. Timing dramatically affects conflict resolution outcomes. Attempting to resolve conflicts when people are emotionally activated, stressed, or distracted rarely produces good results. The best time for difficult conversations is when all parties are calm, focused, and have adequate time to work through issues thoroughly. Creating the right environment for difficult conversations requires choosing appropriate settings and eliminating distractions. Private spaces reduce the risk of embarrassment and allow for more honest communication. Comfortable seating arrangements that don't create power imbalances help people feel more relaxed and open. The opening of difficult conversations sets the tone for everything that follows. Starting with acknowledgement of the relationship's value and expressing genuine intention to solve problems together creates a collaborative foundation. Avoiding blame, accusations, or inflammatory language prevents immediate defensive reactions. Effective conflict resolution requires understanding the difference between positions and interests. Positions are what people say they want. Interests are why they want it. Two people might take opposing positions about a specific solution while sharing underlying interests in fairness, respect, or effectiveness. Focusing on interests rather than positions opens up creative solutions that satisfy everyone's core needs. When you understand why someone wants something, you can often find alternative ways to meet their needs while also addressing your own concerns. Active listening becomes crucial during conflicts because people need to feel heard and understood before they can consider changing their positions. This doesn't mean agreeing with everything someone says, but it means demonstrating that you comprehend their perspective and acknowledge their concerns as legitimate. Reflecting back what you hear serves multiple purposes. It shows that you're paying attention, gives the other person a chance to correct any misunderstandings, and often helps them clarify their own thoughts and feelings. Sometimes people discover that their initial position isn't actually what they most care about. Emotional regulation during conflict requires recognizing that strong emotions are normal and useful but need to be managed appropriately. Anger often signals violated boundaries or values. Fear might indicate concerns about security or fairness. Sadness could reflect disappointment about unmet expectations. Acknowledging emotions without being controlled by them allows you to use emotional information constructively. When someone is angry, you might say, "I can see this situation is really frustrating for you. Can you help me understand what's most important to you here?" This validates their emotional experience while redirecting toward problem solving. The art of apology represents one of the most powerful conflict resolution tools when used appropriately. Genuine apologies. Acknowledge specific harm caused. Take responsibility without making excuses. Express authentic remorse, and include commitment to different behavior in the future. However, apologies must be earned and genuine to be effective. Apologizing for things you didn't do or aren't responsible for weakens your credibility and enables inappropriate behavior from others. The goal is taking appropriate responsibility for your actual contributions to problems. Finding common ground during conflicts requires looking beyond surface disagreements to shared values, goals, or concerns. Even in heated disagreements, people often care about similar things: fairness, respect, effectiveness, or security. Identifying these shared concerns creates a foundation for collaborative problem solving. Generating solutions requires moving beyond either or thinking toward creative alternatives that address everyone's core needs. Brainstorming multiple options before evaluating any of them prevents premature commitment to suboptimal solutions. The best resolutions often combine elements from different approaches. Implementation agreements must be specific, measurable, and include accountability mechanisms. Vague agreements like "we'll communicate better" rarely produce lasting change. Specific commitments like "we'll have a weekly check-in meeting every Friday at 3 p.m. to discuss project status and address any concerns." Create clear expectations and follow-through structures. The follow-up phase of conflict resolution often determines whether agreements actually produce lasting change. Scheduling specific times to evaluate progress, adjust agreements if necessary, and address new issues prevents problems from recurring or escalating. Mastering difficult conversations requires recognizing that temporary discomfort during honest dialogue prevents much greater pain from unresolved problems. When you develop skill and confidence in addressing conflicts directly and compassionately, you become someone others trust to handle challenging situations constructively. Chapter 9: Social Positioning and Reputation Management. Creating your strategic social identity. Your reputation precedes you into every social and professional interaction, influencing how others perceive your ideas, trust your judgment, and respond to your requests. Most people leave reputation to chance, hoping that good intentions and decent work will create positive perceptions over time. This passive approach often fails because reputation isn't just about what you do. It's about how what you do gets perceived, interpreted, and communicated by others. Strategic reputation management involves deliberately shaping how others think about your character, competence, and value. This doesn't mean creating a false image or manipulating others' perceptions dishonestly. It means ensuring that your genuine strengths, values, and contributions get recognized and remembered accurately. The foundation of strong reputation is consistent behavior that demonstrates your core values in action. When your actions consistently align with your stated principles, people learn to predict and trust your responses to different situations. This reliability becomes the basis for confidence in your character and judgment. Building reputation requires understanding that different audiences value different qualities. In professional settings, competence, reliability, and strategic thinking might be most important. In social settings, warmth, humor, and supportiveness might carry more weight. In leadership situations, vision, decisiveness, and integrity often matter most. The key is not becoming a different person for different audiences, but emphasizing different aspects of your authentic self based on what each situation requires. Your core character remains consistent while your presentation adapts to context and audience needs. Visibility plays a crucial role in reputation building because people can't appreciate qualities they never witness. Even exceptional work has limited reputational impact if it happens behind closed doors. Strategic positioning requires finding appropriate ways to showcase your contributions, insights, and value. This doesn't mean bragging or self-promotion in obvious ways that create negative reactions. It means ensuring that your best work gets seen by the right people at the right times. Speaking up in meetings when you have valuable insights, volunteering for visible projects, and sharing successes appropriately all contribute to positive positioning. Association management affects reputation because people judge you partly based on who you choose to spend time with and align yourself with. Being consistently associated with respected, successful, and principled people enhances your own reputation. Conversely, regular association with people known for poor judgment, unreliability, or questionable ethics can damage your standing even if you personally maintain high standards. This doesn't mean being superficial in your relationships or dropping friends who go through difficult periods. It means being thoughtful about professional associations and understanding how different relationships might affect others' perceptions of your judgment and values. Expertise development creates reputation advantages because people naturally defer to those who demonstrably know more about relevant topics. Becoming genuinely expert in areas that matter to your personal or professional goals establishes you as a valuable resource and trusted authority. Building expertise requires continuous learning, staying current with trends and developments and finding ways to share your knowledge appropriately. Writing articles, giving presentations, participating in expert panels, or simply being the person who others turn to for insights in specific areas all contribute to expertise-based reputation. Communication style significantly impacts how others perceive your intelligence, competence, and leadership potential. Clear, confident communication enhances reputation while unclear, hesitant or aggressive communication undermines it. The way you express ideas matters as much as the quality of the ideas themselves. Developing authoritative communication requires eliminating hedging language that undermines confidence in your statements. Instead of saying, "I think maybe we should consider possibly trying this approach," say, "I recommend we implement this approach because it addresses our main challenges effectively." However, authoritative communication must be balanced with appropriate humility and openness to other perspectives. The goal is confident expression of your views, not arrogant dismissal of alternative possibilities. Crisis management represents a crucial reputation skill because how you handle difficult situations often defines how others perceive your character and capabilities. People forget many routine interactions, but they remember how you responded during pressure, conflict, or failure. Effective crisis management requires taking appropriate responsibility without unnecessary self-blame, focusing on solutions rather than problems, and maintaining calm professionalism even under stress. When you handle crisis well, you actually strengthen your reputation because people see evidence of your character under pressure. The concept of reputation maintenance involves protecting the positive reputation you've built while continuing to strengthen it over time. This requires consistent behavior, careful attention to how your actions might be perceived, and quick correction of any misunderstandings that might damage your standing. Long-term reputation building requires understanding that reputation is like a bank account. Every positive interaction, successful project and demonstration of good character makes deposits. Every mistake, conflict, or disappointing outcome makes withdrawals. Maintaining a positive balance requires consistently making more deposits than withdrawals. The most sophisticated aspect of reputation management is understanding how reputation creates opportunities. When you're known for specific strengths and qualities, people naturally think of you for relevant opportunities. Strong reputation becomes a competitive advantage that opens doors, creates partnerships, and generates support for your initiatives. Strategic reputation building also involves helping others succeed and build their own positive reputations. When you consistently support others' growth, celebrate their successes and help them overcome challenges, you become associated with positive outcomes and generous character. This approach creates a network of people who are invested in your success because you've been invested in theirs. Chapter 10. Group Dynamics and Social Leadership. Influencing Collective Behavior. Understanding group dynamics represents the difference between being swept along by collective behavior and strategically influencing group outcomes. Groups operate according to psychological principles that differ significantly from individual psychology. People behave differently in groups than they do alone, and these differences create both opportunities and challenges for those who understand how to navigate them effectively. Every group develops its own culture, implicit rules, and behavioral norms, often without conscious recognition from group members. These cultural elements powerfully shape individual behavior within the group. People who would never interrupt in one-on-one conversations might regularly interrupt in groups where that behavior has become normalized. Individuals who are naturally collaborative might become competitive in groups that reward individual achievement over collective success. Understanding these cultural dynamics allows you to recognize which behaviors will be rewarded or punished within specific groups and adjust your approach accordingly. More importantly, it enables you to influence the development of group culture in directions that serve everyone more effectively. Social leadership within groups doesn't require formal authority or designated positions. It emerges from understanding group needs and consistently providing value that helps the group achieve its objectives. Social leaders become influential because they solve problems others can't solve, facilitate collaboration others can't create, and provide direction. When groups become uncertain or fragmented, the foundation of social leadership is reading group energy and emotional states accurately. Groups, like individuals, have moods that shift based on recent events, external pressures, and internal dynamics. Sometimes groups feel energized and optimistic, ready to tackle ambitious challenges. Other times they feel frustrated, discouraged, or fragmented. Effective social leaders learn to calibrate their approach to match group emotional states. When a group feels overwhelmed, providing clarity and breaking complex challenges into manageable steps helps restore confidence when a group lacks energy. Identifying quick wins or celebrating recent successes can restore momentum. Group communication patterns reveal power structures, influence relationships and decision-making processes. Observing who speaks first, who gets interrupted, whose ideas get developed, and whose suggestions get ignored, provides valuable information about group hierarchies and dynamics. Strategic communicators position themselves effectively within these patterns. They speak at moments when their contributions will have maximum impact. They build on ideas that have already gained group acceptance. They support worthwhile suggestions from others to build alliance relationships. The concept of social proof operates powerfully within groups because people look to others, especially similar others, to determine appropriate behavior and attitudes. When respected group members support an idea or approach, others become much more likely to support it as well. This principle explains why gaining support from influential group members early is so important for any initiative. Building coalitions requires identifying natural allies who share your goals or values and working with them to create broader support. Coalition building isn't about manipulation. It's about finding genuine alignment and working together toward shared objectives. Group decision-making processes vary significantly, and understanding the specific process used by each group determines how to influence outcomes effectively. Some groups make decisions through formal voting, others through consensus building, and still others through deference to authority figures. In voting-based systems, building majority support requires understanding what motivates different members and addressing their concerns effectively. In consensus-based systems, finding solutions that address everyone's core needs becomes crucial. In authority-based systems, influencing the decision-maker directly might be more effective than trying to sway the entire group. Conflict dynamics within groups require different approaches than individual conflicts. Group conflicts often involve multiple parties with different perspectives. Alliance structures that complicate simple resolution, and audience effects that make face-saving more important. Effective group conflict resolution requires understanding all parties' positions. Identifying common ground that can serve as a foundation for agreement, and creating solutions that allow everyone to maintain dignity while achieving core objectives. The role of group facilitator represents one of the most powerful forms of social leadership because facilitators shape how groups process information, make decisions, and interact with each other. Good facilitation helps groups achieve better outcomes while creating positive experiences for all participants. Facilitation skills include managing speaking opportunities fairly, keeping discussions focused on relevant topics, summarizing key points to ensure understanding, and helping groups reach closure on decisions. These skills make you valuable to any group and naturally position you for leadership roles. Innovation and change within groups requires understanding resistance patterns and change dynamics. Groups tend to resist changes that threaten established relationships, disrupt comfortable routines, or create uncertainty about outcomes. Overcoming this resistance requires demonstrating clear benefits, addressing legitimate concerns, and implementing changes gradually when possible. The most effective change agents within groups start by building credibility through consistent value provision. Identify early adopters who are naturally open to new approaches and create small successes that demonstrate the value of proposed changes. Group motivation requires understanding what drives collective energy and commitment. Groups become motivated when they have clear shared goals, believe their efforts will make a difference, and feel supported in their work. Creating these conditions becomes a primary responsibility of social leaders. Recognition and celebration play crucial roles in maintaining group motivation. Acknowledging individual contributions publicly, celebrating group achievements, and connecting current efforts to larger purposes help sustain energy and commitment over time. The highest level of group leadership involves developing other leaders within the group rather than centralizing all influence in yourself. Empowering others to take initiative, make decisions, and contribute their unique strengths creates stronger, more resilient groups that don't depend entirely on any single individual. This distributed leadership approach requires confidence in your own value and genuine commitment to group success over personal recognition. When you consistently help others succeed and develop their capabilities, you become associated with group effectiveness and naturally maintain influential positioning. Mastering group dynamics transforms you from someone who hopes groups will function well into someone who actively shapes group culture, facilitates effective collaboration, and influences collective outcomes. These skills become increasingly valuable as your personal and professional responsibilities grow. Chapter 11. Advanced Persuasion Psychology. The Science of Ethical Influence. Most people approach persuasion through trial and error, using techniques they've observed others use without understanding the psychological principles that make certain approaches effective. This random approach produces inconsistent results and often creates resistance rather than genuine agreement. Master persuaders operate differently. They understand the deep psychological mechanisms that drive human decision-making and apply these principles systematically to create authentic influence. The foundation of advanced persuasion is understanding that people don't make decisions rationally, even when they believe they do. Neuroscience research reveals that emotions drive decisions while logic provides post hoc justification for choices already made at the subconscious level. This means effective persuasion must engage emotions first, then provide logical support for emotionally driven conclusions. Emotional engagement requires understanding what people truly care about beneath their surface statements. Someone might say they want the most cost-effective solution, but their real concern might be avoiding risk or maintaining their reputation for good judgment. Someone might claim they need more information before deciding, but their actual hesitation might stem from fear of making the wrong choice. Identifying these deeper emotional drivers requires asking questions that probe beneath initial responses. Instead of accepting someone's first explanation for their position, explore what they're hoping to achieve or avoid. What would success look like from their perspective? What concerns them most about different approaches? What experiences have shaped their thinking about similar situations? The principle of cognitive dissonance explains why people resist changing their minds even when presented with compelling evidence that contradicts their existing beliefs. When new information conflicts with established positions, people experience psychological discomfort that they typically resolve by rejecting the new information rather than changing their positions. Advanced persuaders work with cognitive dissonance rather than against it. Instead of directly contradicting existing beliefs, they help people discover inconsistencies within their own thinking. They ask questions that reveal gaps between stated values and actual behavior or between different beliefs the person holds simultaneously. This approach allows people to change their minds without feeling defeated or embarrassed. They reach new conclusions through their own reasoning process rather than being forced to accept external arguments. This self-persuasion creates much stronger commitment than externally imposed position changes. The concept of mental models provides another powerful persuasion tool. Everyone interprets new information through existing mental frameworks developed through education, experience, and cultural conditioning. When your message aligns with someone's existing mental models, they accept it easily. When it conflicts with their frameworks, they resist or reject it automatically. Effective persuasion requires either working within existing mental models or gradually expanding them to accommodate new possibilities. This might involve using analogies that connect unfamiliar concepts to familiar experiences, providing case studies that demonstrate how similar people successfully adopted new approaches, or breaking complex changes into smaller steps that feel manageable. Social proof operates as one of the most powerful persuasion principles because humans are fundamentally social creatures who look to others for guidance about appropriate behavior and attitudes. When people see that others, especially similar others, have made certain choices or hold certain beliefs, they become much more likely to adopt those same positions. Strategic persuaders collect and present social proof systematically. They gather testimonials from credible sources, document success stories from relevant examples, and create opportunities for people to observe others making desired choices. They understand that showing is more powerful than telling. When it comes to demonstrating that change is both possible and beneficial, the timing of persuasive efforts dramatically affects their success. People are more receptive to new ideas when they're experiencing dissatisfaction with current situations, facing deadlines that require decisions, or encountering opportunities that align with their goals. Attempting persuasion when people feel comfortable with the status quo rarely produces significant results. Recognizing optimal timing requires understanding the natural rhythms of decision-making in different contexts. Organizations often become more open to change after experiencing setbacks or when new leadership creates opportunities for fresh approaches. Individuals frequently become more receptive to personal changes during life transitions or after significant experiences that shift their perspectives. The framing of choices influences decisions more than the actual content of those choices. The same option can be presented as avoiding loss or achieving gain, as maintaining security or pursuing opportunity, as following best practices or pioneering innovative approaches. Each frame appeals to different psychological motivations and produces different responses. Master persuaders test different frames to discover which approaches resonate most effectively with specific audiences. They understand that logical content matters less than psychological positioning when it comes to influencing decisions and behavior. The contrast principle affects how people evaluate options by making certain choices seem more attractive through comparison with less desirable alternatives. When you present a moderate request after first making a larger request, the moderate option appears more reasonable. By contrast, when you demonstrate problems with current approaches before proposing solutions, your alternatives seem more appealing. Using contrast ethically requires ensuring that the comparisons you create reflect genuine differences rather than artificial manipulations. The goal is helping people recognize true value and make better decisions, not tricking them into choices that don't serve their interests. Advanced persuasion also involves understanding and addressing the specific concerns that prevent people from making desired changes. Some people resist because they doubt the benefits will justify the costs. Others hesitate because they fear failure or judgment from others. Still, others avoid change because they lack confidence in their ability to implement new approaches successfully. Effective persuaders diagnose resistance sources accurately and address them directly. They provide evidence that demonstrates benefits, share stories that reduce fear of failure, and offer support systems that increase confidence in successful implementation. The highest level of persuasion involves helping people persuade themselves by creating experiences that allow them to discover desired conclusions through their own observation and reasoning. This might involve arranging meetings with satisfied customers, providing trial periods for new approaches, or creating opportunities for people to test ideas on a small scale before making larger commitments. When people reach conclusions through their own experience, they feel ownership of those decisions and become much more committed to following through. This experiential persuasion creates lasting change because it's based on personal discovery rather than external pressure. Chapter 12. Network Building and Strategic Relationship Management. Creating your circle of influence. Your network determines the opportunities you encounter, the resources you can access, and the influence you can exercise in both personal and professional contexts. Most people approach networking passively, hoping that good relationships will develop naturally through proximity and shared activities. While organic relationships certainly have value, strategic network building requires more intentional effort to create connections that provide mutual benefit over time. The foundation of strategic networking is understanding that valuable relationships are built on consistent value exchange rather than one-time interactions. Instead of collecting business cards or social media connections, focus on developing relationships where you regularly provide value to others and they provide value to you. This creates sustainable networks based on genuine mutual interest rather than superficial social obligations. Value provision in networking doesn't require having significant resources or expertise. You can provide value through making strategic introductions between people who should know each other, sharing relevant information or opportunities you encounter, offering support during challenging periods, or simply providing thoughtful perspective on problems others are facing. The key is identifying what each person in your network needs most and looking for ways to help them achieve their goals. When you consistently help others succeed, they naturally become invested in your success as well. This creates positive relationship dynamics that strengthen over time rather than deteriorating through neglect. Strategic network building requires understanding different types of relationships and cultivating each type appropriately. Core relationships include your closest personal and professional connections who provide significant ongoing support and collaboration. These relationships require substantial time and emotional investment but provide the greatest return in terms of opportunities, resources, and personal satisfaction. Active relationships include people you interact with regularly for specific purposes, colleagues on current projects, members of professional organizations, neighbors in your community, or friends with shared interests. These relationships require consistent but moderate investment and provide steady value through information sharing, collaboration opportunities, and social support. Dormant relationships include people from your past who you don't currently interact with regularly, but who might become valuable again under different circumstances. Former colleagues, classmates, neighbors from previous communities, or friends from different life phases. Maintaining loose contact with dormant ties requires minimal effort, but can provide significant value when circumstances change. Weak ties, contrary to intuition, often provide the most valuable new opportunities because they connect you to information and resources that don't circulate within your existing network. The person you meet briefly at a conference might introduce you to a career opportunity that your close colleagues never hear about. The acquaintance from a different industry might have insights that solve a problem your usual advisors can't address. Cultivating weak ties requires being genuinely curious about people you encounter in various contexts and maintaining light but consistent contact over time. This might involve connecting with interesting people on professional social media platforms, attending diverse events where you meet people from different backgrounds, or participating in activities that expose you to new communities. Digital networking tools have transformed relationship management by making it easier to maintain contact with larger numbers of people over time. However, digital connection without meaningful interaction creates the illusion of networking without its substance. The goal is using technology to facilitate genuine relationships, not to replace personal interaction with automated communication. Effective digital networking requires personalizing your communications, sharing valuable content that's relevant to your connection's interests, engaging meaningfully with others' content, and using online interactions to arrange offline meetings when possible. The digital tools are most valuable when they support and enhance personal relationships rather than substituting for them. Geographic networking involves building relationships within your physical location as well as maintaining connections across different regions. Local networks provide immediate opportunities for collaboration, support, and resource sharing. They also create community connections that enhance quality of life and provide stability during transitions. Global networks provide access to diverse perspectives, international opportunities, and resources that aren't available locally. They also create backup options and alternative pathways that increase resilience and flexibility in your personal and professional development. Industry or field-specific networking connects you with people who share professional interests, challenges, and opportunities. These relationships provide access to job opportunities, collaboration possibilities, expertise development, and industry insights that help you stay current with trends and developments. Cross-industry networking connects you with people from different professional backgrounds who might offer fresh perspectives on common challenges, introduce you to different approaches and methodologies, or provide opportunities for career transitions and skill development. The concept of network diversity ensures that your relationships include people with different backgrounds, perspectives, experiences, and resources. Homogeneous networks, while comfortable, limit the range of opportunities and insights available to you. Diverse networks provide access to broader information, different problem-solving approaches, and more varied opportunities. Building network diversity requires intentionally seeking relationships with people who differ from you in terms of age, cultural background, industry experience, expertise areas, personality types, and life experiences. This doesn't mean collecting diverse people like trophies, but genuinely valuing different perspectives and actively learning from people whose experiences differ from your own. Relationship maintenance requires systematic attention over time because relationships deteriorate without ongoing investment. This doesn't mean constant communication, but it does mean periodic contact that demonstrates continued interest and care. The frequency and intensity of contact should match the importance and closeness of each relationship. Strategic relationship maintenance involves tracking important events in people's lives, remembering details from previous conversations, acknowledging achievements and milestones, offering support during difficulties, and sharing opportunities or information that might be valuable to them. Network activation means knowing when and how to request support, advice, or opportunities from your network without damaging relationships through excessive demands. Effective network activation requires understanding each person's expertise and resources, making specific rather than vague requests, offering reciprocal value, and expressing genuine appreciation for help received. The highest level of strategic networking involves helping others build their networks by making strategic introductions, including people in relevant opportunities and facilitating connections that serve multiple parties. When you become known as someone who helps others expand their networks, you naturally become more central to expanded network structures and more valuable to all your connections. Chapter 13. Micro-expressions and Body Language Mastery. Reading the hidden signals. Human communication operates simultaneously on verbal and nonverbal channels, with nonverbal signals often providing more accurate information about true thoughts, feelings, and intentions than spoken words. While people can control their verbal communication fairly easily, nonverbal expressions occur more automatically and reveal authentic emotional states that individuals might prefer to conceal. Learning to read these nonverbal signals accurately provides a significant advantage in all social interactions. You can detect when someone agrees with your proposal but has unstated concerns. You can recognize when apparent cooperation masks underlying resistance. You can identify genuine enthusiasm versus polite interest. This information allows you to adjust your approach in real time to address hidden issues and improve outcomes. Facial expressions provide the richest source of emotional information because the face contains more muscles dedicated to expression than any other part of the body. These muscles respond automatically to emotional states, often revealing feelings within fractions of a second before conscious control can override them. The 7 universal facial expressions identified by Paul Ekman appear across all cultures. Happiness, sadness, anger, fear, disgust, surprise, and contempt. However, These basic expressions represent only gross emotional categories. The subtle variations within each expression provide much more detailed information about specific emotional states and their intensity. Genuine happiness engages both the mouth and the eye muscles, creating what researchers call a Duchenne smile. The corners of the mouth turn upward while the muscles around the eyes contract, creating slight wrinkling at the corners. Fake or social smiles only engage the mouth muscles, leaving the eye area unchanged. Learning to distinguish genuine from performed happiness helps you identify authentic positive responses versus social politeness. Anger manifests in multiple forms that require different responses. Flash anger appears as brief muscle tension in the jaw, tightening around the eyes, or momentary lip compression. This indicates momentary irritation that might be easily addressed through acknowledgement or adjustment. Sustained anger shows in prolonged muscle tension, particularly in the jaw and around the eyes, often accompanied by slightly narrowed eyes and compressed lips. Cold anger, the most dangerous form, appears as controlled facial tension with deliberate eye contact and minimal expression. This indicates calculated displeasure that won't be easily resolved through simple adjustments. Recognizing these different forms of anger allows you to respond appropriately rather than treating all anger the same way. Fear expressions vary depending on the threat source. Social fear appears as reduced eye contact, slightly raised eyebrows, and tension around the mouth. Performance fear shows in wide eyes, raised eyebrows, and sometimes slight mouth opening. Physical fear displays more dramatic expressions with wide eyes, raised eyebrows, and often an open mouth. Understanding the type of fear someone experiences allows you to provide appropriate reassurance. Modify the situation to reduce threat or adjust your approach to avoid triggering additional anxiety. Disgust often appears as a wrinkled nose, raised upper lip, or lowered eyebrows. However, disgust doesn't always relate to physical substances. People display disgust micro-expressions when encountering ideas, proposals, or behaviors they find morally or intellectually repugnant. Recognizing disgust signals allows you to address underlying objections that might not be stated verbally. Surprise appears as raised eyebrows, wide eyes, and often a dropped jaw. However, the duration and context of surprise expressions provide important additional information. Brief surprise followed by positive expressions indicates pleasant unexpected events. Surprise followed by negative expressions suggests unwelcome developments. Contempt. The only asymmetrical facial expression appears as one corner of the mouth pulling slightly upward. This expression indicates feelings of superiority or disdain and represents a particularly dangerous signal in relationships because contempt predicts relationship failure more reliably than other negative emotions. Micro-expressions are brief, involuntary facial expressions that appear for fractions of a second before conscious control suppresses them. These fleeting expressions often reveal true feelings that contradict verbal statements or deliberately displayed expressions. Learning to recognize micro-expressions requires training your visual attention and developing pattern recognition for subtle facial changes. Body language provides additional layers of emotional and psychological information through posture, gesture, and movement patterns. However, body language must be interpreted in context because individual gestures can have multiple meanings depending on circumstances, cultural background, and personal habits. Defensive body language includes crossed arms, backward lean, minimal eye contact, and closed postures. However, crossed arms might also indicate cold, comfortable positioning or simply personal habit. The key is reading clusters of defensive signals rather than interpreting individual gestures in isolation. Confident body language displays as upright posture, open gestures, direct eye contact, and relaxed movements. Confident individuals take up appropriate space, move with purpose, and maintain steady eye contact while speaking and listening. Nervous energy appears through fidgeting, rapid movements, touching the face or neck, and restless positioning. However, some people naturally move more than others. So the key is noticing changes from someone's baseline behavior rather than absolute levels of movement. Vocal tonality carries emotional information that often contradicts verbal content. Stress appears in higher pitch, faster pace, and tension in the voice. Confidence manifests as lower pitch, measured pace, and clear articulation. Deception often involves vocal changes such as higher pitch, hesitations, or overprecise pronunciation. The concept of baseline behavior is crucial for accurate nonverbal reading. Everyone has natural patterns of expression, movement, and vocal tone that represent their normal state. Significant deviations from baseline behavior indicate emotional changes that deserve attention. Establishing baseline requires observing someone during neutral, comfortable situations before trying to interpret their behavior during important interactions. This gives you reference points for recognizing when their nonverbal communication changes in response to specific topics or situations. Cultural differences affect nonverbal communication significantly. Eye contact patterns, personal space preferences, gesture meanings, and expression intensity vary across cultures. What appears confident in one culture might seem aggressive in another. What seems respectful in one context might appear evasive elsewhere. Effective nonverbal reading requires adjusting for cultural background while looking for universal patterns that appear across different groups. Basic emotions appear similarly across cultures, but their appropriate expression and intensity vary significantly. The integration of verbal and nonverbal information requires paying attention to both channels simultaneously and noting when they align or contradict each other. When verbal and nonverbal messages match, you can feel confident about the communication's accuracy. When they contradict, the nonverbal information usually provides more reliable insight into true thoughts and feelings. Developing nonverbal reading skills requires deliberate practice and systematic observation. Start by focusing on one person you interact with regularly and paying attention to their expression patterns during different types of conversations. Notice how their facial expressions, body language, and vocal tone change when discussing different topics or experiencing different emotional states. The goal isn't to become a human lie detector or to judge others based on their nonverbal signals. The goal is developing genuine understanding that allows you to respond more effectively and compassionately to the people around you. When you can read what others are experiencing beyond their words, you can provide more appropriate support, address unstated concerns, and build stronger relationships. Chapter 14. Digital Age Social Intelligence. Navigating Virtual Relationships and Online Influence. The digital revolution has fundamentally transformed social interaction, creating new opportunities for connection while introducing unprecedented challenges for building authentic relationships and exercising ethical influence. Understanding how to operate effectively in digital social environments requires adapting traditional social intelligence principles to virtual contexts while developing new skills specific to online interaction. Digital communication removes many nonverbal cues that provide crucial information in face-to-face interactions. Without access to facial expressions, body language, and vocal tone, misunderstandings become more common, and relationships require different approaches to develop trust and connection. Text-based communication relies heavily on word choice, timing, and context to convey emotional information that would be immediately apparent in person. The asynchronous nature of much digital communication creates additional complexity because responses don't happen in real time. This delay allows for more thoughtful communication, but also creates opportunities for misinterpretation when context gets lost or assumptions fill gaps between messages. Learning to communicate clearly and completely in digital formats requires different skills than verbal conversation. Social media platforms create new forms of social dynamics that blend public and private communication. Posts and comments exist in quasi-public spaces where audience awareness affects how people present themselves and respond to others. Understanding these audience dynamics is crucial for effective social media interaction and influence. Personal branding in digital environments requires consistency across multiple platforms while adapting content and tone to different audience expectations. Your professional network might expect formal industry-focused content while your personal connections might prefer casual lifestyle-oriented posts. Successful digital presence management involves maintaining authentic core identity while adjusting presentation for different contexts. The concept of digital reputation operates differently from in-person reputation because online content persists indefinitely and can be easily shared beyond original audiences. A single poorly considered post or comment can damage reputation in ways that would be impossible in purely offline contexts. This permanence requires more careful consideration of all digital communications. Building digital relationships requires finding ways to create genuine connection despite technological barriers. This might involve video calls that provide visual cues missing from text communication, voice messages that convey emotional tone, or thoughtful written communication that demonstrates real understanding and interest in others. The quality of digital relationships depends more on consistency and authenticity than frequency of contact. Regular, genuine interactions create stronger connections than sporadic bursts of activity. This means developing sustainable approaches to digital relationship maintenance that you can maintain over time. Online influence operates through different mechanisms than in-person influence because trust develops through accumulated digital interactions rather than physical presence. Digital influence builders must demonstrate expertise, consistency, and genuine value provision over extended periods to develop the credibility that creates influence opportunities. Content creation becomes a primary vehicle for digital influence because valuable content attracts attention, demonstrates expertise, and provides opportunities for meaningful interaction. However, effective content creation requires understanding audience needs, platform algorithms, and engagement patterns that determine whether content reaches intended audiences. The democratization of information distribution through digital platforms means that influence increasingly comes from providing unique insights, curating valuable information, or facilitating connections rather than controlling access to resources. Digital influence leaders succeed by becoming valuable nodes in information and relationship networks. Digital networking requires different strategies than in-person networking because initial connections often happen without prior relationships or mutual contacts. Cold outreach through digital platforms can be effective when it provides genuine value and demonstrates authentic interest in potential connections. However, digital networking also requires filtering through larger volumes of low-quality connection attempts. Platform-specific social norms affect how people interact on different digital services. Professional platforms like LinkedIn reward formal business-focused communication while casual platforms like Instagram favor visual lifestyle-oriented content. Understanding these cultural differences prevents social mistakes and improves engagement effectiveness. The algorithm-mediated nature of many digital platforms means that social intelligence must include understanding how technological systems filter and prioritize content. Your ability to reach and influence others depends partly on creating content that algorithmic systems recognize as valuable and engaging. Privacy considerations in digital social intelligence involve understanding how much personal information to share in different contexts and with different audiences. Oversharing can damage professional relationships while undersharing can prevent authentic personal connections. Digital privacy also involves understanding how platforms use and share personal data. Digital detox and boundary setting become necessary skills because digital communication can become overwhelming and addictive. Effective digital social intelligence includes knowing when to engage online and when to prioritize offline relationships and activities. The integration of digital and offline relationship management requires using digital tools to enhance rather than replace in-person interaction. Video calls might maintain long-distance relationships between in-person meetings. Social media might help identify common interests that lead to deeper offline conversations. Digital calendars might coordinate group activities that build community connections. Digital empathy requires recognizing that abbreviated communication formats don't provide complete pictures of others' experiences and emotional states. Developing digital empathy means giving people benefit of doubt when communications seem abrupt. Asking clarifying questions when messages seem unclear and recognizing that everyone manages digital communication differently. Cross-generational digital competence recognizes that people of different ages have different comfort levels and preferences for digital communication. Effective digital social intelligence involves adapting your communication approach to match others' digital preferences rather than assuming everyone shares your platform preferences or usage patterns. The future of digital social intelligence involves preparing for continuing technological evolution while maintaining focus on fundamental human needs for connection, understanding and mutual support. New platforms and technologies will emerge, but the underlying principles of genuine care, value provision, and authentic communication will remain crucial for building meaningful relationships. Chapter 15: Integration and Mastery. Building your emotional intelligence operating system. Developing social intelligence and emotional intelligence isn't about learning isolated techniques that you apply in specific situations. True mastery comes from integrating all these skills into a coherent personal operating system that guides how you approach every social interaction. This integration transforms you from someone who consciously applies social techniques into someone who naturally operates from a place of genuine social competence and emotional wisdom. The foundation of integration is self-awareness that extends beyond recognizing your emotions to understanding your patterns, triggers, and default responses in different social situations. This meta-awareness allows you to notice when you're falling into unproductive patterns and consciously choose more effective approaches. Developing this level of self-awareness requires regular reflection on your social interactions. After important conversations, meetings, or social events, spend time analyzing what went well and what could have been improved. Notice patterns in your reactions to different types of people or situations. Identify the circumstances that bring out your best social performance and those that trigger your least effective responses. The goal isn't perfection or constant self-monitoring. It's developing enough awareness to recognize when you're operating effectively and when you need to make conscious adjustments. This awareness becomes the foundation for continuous improvement and adaptive response to new social challenges. Personal values alignment ensures that your social skills serve authentic purposes rather than manipulative ones. Your enhanced ability to read others, influence outcomes, and manage relationships must align with genuine care for others' well-being and commitment to mutual benefit. Without this ethical foundation, social skills become tools for exploitation rather than instruments for positive impact. Clarifying your values requires understanding what you actually care about beyond social success or personal advancement. What kind of impact do you want to have on others? What type of relationships do you want to build? How do you want to be remembered by the people who interact with you? These deeper questions provide guidance for how to use social competence ethically. Systematic skill development involves identifying your current strengths and weaknesses across all areas of social intelligence and creating deliberate practice plans for continued growth. Different people naturally excel in different areas. Some might be strong at reading emotions but weak at managing conflict. Others might excel at group dynamics but struggle with one-on-one rapport building. Honest self-assessment requires seeking feedback from trusted friends, colleagues or mentors who can provide accurate perspective on your social effectiveness. Sometimes our self-perceptions don't match how others experience our behavior. External feedback helps calibrate self-awareness and identify blind spots that limit effectiveness. The concept of adaptive expertise means developing the ability to adjust your approach based on situational requirements rather than using the same social style in every context. Different situations require different aspects of social intelligence. Crisis situations might require emotional regulation and clear communication. Creative collaborations might need rapport building and conflict resolution. Leadership opportunities might demand strategic influence and group dynamics management. Developing adaptive expertise requires building competence across all areas of social intelligence while maintaining the flexibility to emphasize different skills as circumstances require. This prevents you from being effective only in narrow social contexts and allows you to contribute value across diverse situations. Practice integration involves finding opportunities to apply multiple social intelligence skills simultaneously in real-world situations. Instead of practicing emotional reading in isolation, find conversations where you can practice reading emotions while also building rapport and exercising strategic influence. This integrated practice develops the ability to operate effectively on multiple levels simultaneously. The best practice opportunities often arise in situations that matter to you personally or professionally. Volunteer for leadership roles that require group dynamics management. Take on projects that involve difficult conversations and conflict resolution. Seek opportunities to mentor others, which requires advanced listening, empathy, and developmental support. Feedback loops create continuous improvement by helping you understand the results of your social choices and adjust accordingly. This requires paying attention to how others respond to your communication style, noting which approaches generate positive outcomes and identifying patterns in your social effectiveness. Creating formal feedback loops might involve asking trusted colleagues or friends for periodic input on your communication effectiveness. It might include tracking outcomes from important conversations or presentations. It could involve journaling about social interactions to identify patterns and improvement opportunities. Environmental optimization involves arranging your life and work situations to support your best social performance. Some people are more effective in smaller groups while others thrive in larger social gatherings. Some perform best in structured situations while others excel in informal contexts. Understanding your optimal social environments allows you to seek those situations when possible and prepare more thoroughly for challenging contexts. This doesn't mean avoiding difficult social situations, but it means being strategic about when and how you engage with them. If you're naturally introverted, you might schedule demanding social events when your energy is highest and build in recovery time afterward. If you struggle with conflict, you might prepare more thoroughly for difficult conversations and seek support from others who can help you navigate challenging dynamics. Continuous learning involves staying current with research in psychology, neuroscience, and social behavior while also learning from your ongoing experiences with different people and situations. Social intelligence is an evolving field with new insights emerging regularly about how relationships work, how influence operates, and how emotional regulation can be improved. Reading books, attending workshops, and participating in professional development related to social skills contributes to ongoing growth. However, the most valuable learning often comes from relationships with people who model excellent social intelligence and from challenging situations that force you to develop new capabilities. The integration of social intelligence into your identity means moving from thinking of these skills as techniques you apply to seeing them as natural expressions of who you are. When social competence becomes integrated into your identity, you stop consciously trying to use social skills and start naturally operating from a place of genuine care, effective communication, and ethical influence. This integration takes time and requires consistent practice across many different situations. The goal isn't becoming perfect at social interaction, but developing enough competence and confidence to handle whatever social challenges arise in your personal and professional life. The ultimate measure of social intelligence mastery isn't how well you can manipulate others or how popular you become. It's how effectively you can build meaningful relationships, contribute positively to group dynamics, resolve conflicts constructively, and help others feel understood and valued. When you can consistently create positive outcomes for yourself and others through skillful social interaction, you've achieved genuine social intelligence mastery. Your journey towards social intelligence mastery is unique because it builds on your individual strengths, addresses your specific challenges, and serves your particular goals and values. The frameworks and principles in this audiobook provide structure for that development. But the actual growth happens through your commitment to continuous learning, ethical application, and genuine care for the people you interact with every day. Remember that social intelligence isn't about becoming someone different from who you are. It's about becoming the most effective, authentic, and positively impactful version of yourself in relationship with others. This journey of development enriches not only your own life but also the lives of everyone who has the privilege of meaningful interaction with.